Welcome back to our code walkthrough for the proposed ASRJC Alumni Portal student project. Remember, if you would like to have the full code, you can find the link to our public GitHub repository in the description. So, let's continue the walkthrough of the code and dive into the profile.html page. The profile.html page in the Flask web application facilitates user profile viewing and update, password change, and viewing of collaboration requests. Below, we will take a walkthrough of the code and understand its interactions with the associated JavaScript, profile.js, and relevant Flask routes in routes.py. So firstly, the user profile part shows the heading for the profile section. Next, it is the centered container for the form. Below that, form ID equals the profile form is the form for updating profile information. At the button type equal to submit update profile, it is the button to submit the form to update the profile. Below that, the button one click show change password form change password button is the button to show the change password form. Next, there's also the hidden form for changing the password containing the fields to change the password. Then, over here, there is the user's collaboration request shown in the table form listing all the requests that the person has received. Next, this Ginger template here is to loop through and display all the requests over here. Finally, all the way to at the end, there is a link to the profile.js file so that the file will work. Let's now go to the profile.js file and understand the JavaScript functions for this page. This JavaScript file handles the client-side logic for forms on profile.html. Firstly, this line listens for the DOM content loaded event, which fires when the HTML document has been completely loaded and parsed, without waiting for style sheets, images, and subframes to finish loading. Next up, this fetches the profile data from the server using the API endpoint. Below that, we'll also have to parses the JSON response into a JavaScript object. All the way below that, the catch part, it is to catch and log any error that occurs during the fetch operation. Next, we also select the profile update form and adds an event listener for the submit event. There is also the catching and logging of any error that occurs during the fetch operation. The catch error, console error. Next, we also call the update profile function to submit the form data at the update profile part. Below that, there is the function update profile, which defines the function to update user profile details. The next line is to retrieve values from form fields as shown below, including full name, graduation date, class number, contributions, and whether they are open for collaboration. Over here, once values are retrieved, it sends a post request to the server with the form data. Next, it passes the response to JSON, and below at the alert part is to alert the user of a successful update. The second alert is to alert the user if the update fails. At the console error part, it logs any errors to the console. And below that, the alert alerts the user of an error. Next is the function to display the change password form. And below that, it sets the display style to block, making it visible. Below is the function to hide the change password form. And document part is to set the display style to none, effectively hiding the form. Next, we select the change password form and adds an event listener for the submit event. At the event prevent default, this prevents the default form submission action. And the next part is to change the password subfunction to submit the form data. Next, the change password defines the function to change the user's password. First, it retrieves the values from the password form fields such as current password, new password, and confirm new password values. Once the values are retrieved, it will check if the new passwords match and alerts the user if the passwords do not match. Next, this sends a post request to the database server to change the password, sending both current password and new password. At the then response.json, once it receives a response, it passes the response to JSON. Next, this part here alerts the user password change successful, and the bottom one is to hide the change password form. If the password change is unsuccessful, it also alerts the user. Next, this console error here also logs any errors to the console at the same time and alerts the user of an error. Moving on, let's see the routes.py file and how the routes are being defined. There are two main routes. One is get profile. You also have to render the profile page if the user. At the main routes profile, it renders the profile page if the user is logged in. Then next up, the next route at main.route API profile method equals to get. It fetches the user profile data via a get request, which is useful for asynchronous client-side requests. Let's define the get profile route next. We also have to check if the user is logged in by checking the session data. If the user is not logged in, return error message. Below that, at the user ID, if the user is in the session, then retrieve the user ID from session. Below that, we have to fetch user details from the database using the user ID. We also have to next check if the user is found in the database. If the user is not found, then return an error message. Next up, we have to prepare the profile data to send back to the client. We send profile data as JSON, which will then be handled by the profile.js JavaScript to display on the profile page. Next, we take a look at the update profile route. Check if the user is logged in by checking the session data, and a return error message if user is not logged in. Next, retrieve the user ID from the session and fetch user details from the database using the new user ID. Check if the user is found in database. Otherwise, return an error message if the user is not found. Next, retrieve the updated data sent from the client and update user details based on data retrieved from the client. A very important step will be over here, which is to commit changes to the database. After this is done, a success message will be returned and the user log.route will be shown next. Next, we commit changes to the database at db.session.commit. Then we have to return success message at the return JSONify, which is to update the profile successfully. Finally, there is a user logout route, and the def logout removes user ID from the session to log the user out and redirects them to the home page after logout. There is also another route to change the user password, and it will verify whether the user is logged in. Next, we have to check if the current password is correct. Once that is done, then they will be set a new password and updated in the database. The last part here, which is return JSONify, confirms that the password change was successful. This detailed walkthrough provides a comprehensive explanation and should allow for a clear understanding of how the JavaScript and server-side Python interact to manage profile load from database and profile update to database, while also handling session control to see whether user is logged in or not to ensure security. It also manages the change password feature and displays all collaborations requests. This completes our videos of the proposed ASRJC portal live code and code walkthroughs. We hope that it has been very beneficial. Thank you.